Splatoon is, by far, the shooter I've gotten myself the most invested in. And that's a mark of achievement for the writers over at Nintendo. I mean, for a cute little game about squids shooting their ink at each other and seeing who can make the biggest mess, there's so much here. So much history in this world is sprinkled all over the player experience. Some of the breadcrumbs the writers scattered as small details have major payoffs even games later. I mean, they even justify systems changes between games and universe, when the appropriate level of explanation was, hey, maybe 2 invincibility specials, a special that gives you wall hacks, a special that lets you snipe people halfway across the map, 2 AoE you're not allowed to stand here specials, and a special that allows you to spam lethal bombs at will was a bit much. Let's rate it in this time. Okay, but seriously, what were they on when they made these? So yeah, I love these games. And I've played a heck of a lot of Splatoon as of late, and I think one of the things that makes Splatoon so unique when compared to other shooters is just the weapon design. Like, imagine you tell someone who has no clue about anything in Splatoon that the strongest weapon right now is a pencil. Yeah, that would probably confuse a few people. But some weapons are just cursed, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, someone at Nintendo looked at these weapons and decided, yes, let's just give this weapon absolutely nothing to help itself in battle. Surely it'll work this time. And that's just depressing because I think some of these weapons could really have something if the design team gave them something, anything to work with. Like, let's take the weapon that completely dominated the first year of Splatoon 3, the Splash-O-Matic. It has a unique quirk of perfect shot accuracy with no deviation, even in the air, a sub-weapon that gives a decent poke, and a special that's so strong, it took the balance team several attempts taking it out back to finally get it in an acceptable state, and still one of the better specials in the game. In early tournaments, most teams were running at least 2 of these things because why wouldn't you? The combat power you got from this thing was absurd, and its paint was decent as well, and that's all you really need from a frontline Slayer weapon. All the parts of this kit synergize so well together to make it an overwhelmingly efficient fighting machine. But what if I replaced the burst bomb on this kit with Sprinkler and its special with Big Bubbler? That would be really strange. You would be wondering what this kind of kit was doing on such a short-ranged weapon, and would completely neuter the potential of the main weapon by giving it no tools to help supplement its above-average combat. So yeah, this is the kind of thing I'm talking about when I say unfortunate kits. Stuff that could have been good or even dominate if the devs didn't decide to deprive them of options they really could have used. I looked at all the kits in all 3 games and picked one out from I looked through all the kits in all 3 games and picked out one from each game that really needed just a crumb of anything to make them not be bigger disappointments than your child becoming a VTuber. Now, if you play any of these weapons religiously, I don't want you to go away from this thinking that you aren't allowed to play these weapons. If your enjoyment is just playing a weapon because you find it fun, don't let me rain on your parade. The Splatoon community is pretty great because I don't see a lot of toxicity when it comes to this sort of thing compared to other communities I'm a part of. And I don't want to be the one to ruin that. I just wanted to shed some light on a few kits that I think
really could have spent some more time in the oven.
Starting with Splatoon 1, I actually kind of struggled to come up with a good example of this. Not only because the last time I played Splatoon 1 was almost 9 years ago at this point, but mostly because Splatoon 1 is already a broken mess. But even then, one example came to mind pretty quickly, and that's the refurbished mini Splatling, a weapon Sheldon literally pulled out of a dumpster. Let that set the tone for what this weapon is. Now, for context, the mini Splatling has always been a fairly solid main weapon. It splats quickly, and thanks to its above-average strafing speed, a good mini player could be incredibly hard to pin down. In Splatoon 1, the Zinc mini Splatling was one of the best weapons in the game. The combination of the best sub-weapon in the game and an AoE invincibility special made it easily a top 5 weapon in the game. And you were remiss to find a team that didn't at least consider it on their roster. And now let's compare this absolute shot of a weapon to its cousin, which gets Burst Bomb and Burst Bomb Rush. I've already mentioned that the Burst Bomb is a pretty solid sub-weapon. While yes, you do miss out on the lethal explosion of the other bombs in the game, the speed at which the Burst Bomb comes out and its instant detonation on collision with anything makes it incredibly versatile. You can use it for decent damage poke, quickly painting your feet, painting a surface to climb, or even as a lethal combo with certain main weapons. However, as what I can only imagine is some sort of twisted joke, in the same patch this weapon was introduced into the game, they absolutely gutted Burst Bombs. So if the combination of released Burst Bomb and a Splatling would have been powerful, we'll never know. As an additional middle finger from the developers, this weapon gets the lovely special weapon of Burst Bomb Rush. You know, the thing they nerfed into the ground. And it's not even that good for the mini Splatling. I guess you could like make space with the sheer number of burst bombs you're throwing, but since burst bombs don't do that much damage on their own, using the burst bomb rush is gimping your damage output for relatively little benefit. It's just, someone on the dev team really hated both burst bombs and the Zimmy. That's the only explanation I can think of for this kit. Moving on to Splatoon 2, I actually had to look pretty far to find a good example of a bad Splatoon 2 kit. Not because all of these kits were amazing or anything like that, but mostly because even if a kit had a pretty awful sub or special, you can at least kind of understand what the devs were going for. You know what I can't say that about though? The custom Explosher. The Explosher isn't an awful weapon on paper. Sure, it takes an eternity for its shots to come out and its hitbox is really finicky, but the amount of space you can command if you get a good perch is incredibly impressive. This made the vanilla Explosher a niche pick on certain Splat Zones maps. Its pain output and impressive space control were imperative for the mode, and on some maps, your opponents really didn't have a choice but to respect your poke. But the custom Explosher just gives you nothing to convert that poke into anything meaningful. At least if it got a bomb, right? You could combo the slosh with it and continue your threat from afar. But instead, the custom Explosher gets Point Sensor. A sub that does no damage and just points out if an opponent is in the area. Which if you hit them with your projectile, you already do that. And to add insult to injury, the custom Explosher gets Baller, a special that helps you gap close and get into the fray with a huge explosion. Question, why would a backline support weapon ever use this? Like, it makes sense on a short-range Slayer weapon, right? Because you want to get in with that shield, maybe tag a few people or splat a few people with the explosion and then clean up after. That makes sense. But Splatoon 2 had this really weird habit of putting Baller on weapons that wanted to play at range. But there's a subtle quirk about Baller that makes it even worse for the custom Explosher specifically. You see, the Exploshers are heavy weapons, meaning they slow down their user for just equipping the weapon. Hey guys, it's Editing Capri coming at you live at 2:30 a.m. or something like that. I just want you guys to have a look at the list of light weapons real close. Yes, that's the Splash-O-Matic. It needs it. Back to the video. It turns out, despite gear abilities like run speed up or special power up not affecting your speed in the Baller is affected by weapon weight. This means that the custom Explorer, the only heavy weapon in the game with a Baller, gets the exclusive privilege of moving like a snail in its special. So any particular use that you could think of for the Baller on an Explorer? No, not happening. So yeah, the custom Explorer is considered one of the worst weapon kits in the game, and I think that's real unfortunate. We've seen the Explorer do some really cool things, and I wish it had more of a niche outside of Splat Zones.
What is my purpose?
You ink the zone.
Oh my god.
Moving on to Splatoon 3, man, where do you start with Splatoon 3? For all Splatoon 3 implemented to improve the series, it sure had this weird tendency for giving its weapons kits that were just very milquetoast. An alarming number of weapons in Splatoon 3 have a special that synergizes decently to well with the main weapon, and then you look at the sub-weapon and you're just confused. Which would make you think it was difficult for me to find a good weapon to talk about here, but no, not really. Let's talk about the Splash-O-Matic's sister weapon, the Sploosh-O-Matic. Specifically, the Neo-Sploosh-O-Matic. The Sploosh-O-Matic has always kind of had this reputation as the little Timmy playing on McDonald's Wi-Fi weapon, and I don't exactly blame people for that. In contrast to the Splash-O-Matic's precise firepower from a decent range, the Sploosh-O-Matic fires in a wide spread pattern in front of it from a very short range. As such, in direct combat, it tends to need some help from the sub-weapon to help it not get bullied by almost every other weapon in the game. Something to help close the gap or follow up on. Now, in Splatoon 1 and 2, the Sploosh-O-Matic 7 got a Splat Bomb and a combat special to help fulfill its Slayer role significantly better. Heck, the Sploosh-O-Matic 7 even saw some niche use in Rainmaker during Splatoon 2 because all three parts of its kit do really good object damage. However, that's a good weapon. The Neo-Sploosh is not. The Neo-Sploosh for some reason has always been given really strange kits that don't synergize with the main weapon whatsoever, but the Splatoon 3 variant might be the worst of the worst. The Neo-Sploosh in 3 is stuck with Squid Beacon. I've already established that the Sploosh kind of needs help from its sub-weapon to do anything in combat, and the Squid Beacon certainly doesn't do anything on that front. Now, beacons are helpful as a supportive tool, and I'm a big fan of beacons, but this is still the Sploosh. It needs help in direct combat. So, hopefully the special helps with that, right? Said the deer, knowing she was going into a transition. The Neo-Sploosh in 3 gets Killer Whale 5.1, and it's technically a damaging special, but at the same time, I think this might be a case of anti-synergy. Like I said, the Sploosh struggles at range and needs a means of entry to follow up on any opportunities it does get. The Killer Whale, on the other hand, tends to force people away from you, meaning you have a severely limited time window to follow up on your own special before they run out of reach. And without a damaging sub-weapon to potentially tag someone on the way out, there's not a lot here. At least Splatoon 2's kit had tandem missiles, which potentially gave you full info on your enemies' locations. It's a lot harder to do that with the Killer Whale 5.1. And probably the worst part of all this, right? Is that this all sounds bad enough in a vacuum. But the issue is there's just another weapon that completely outclasses this one. If you look at the Splatana Wiper Deco, it's basically the same kit. It's a short-range Slayer weapon, squid beacons, and a displacement special. The difference is, the Splatana Wiper can actually fight without needing a damaging sub, so if you wanted beacons and a displacement special on your team, you're almost always running this instead. I just hope they give this thing a decent third kit or something, because we've seen the potential of the Sploosh be realized in eras past, and I hate for this weapon to be left in obscurity.
What happened to you, man? Used to be cool.
I'm still cool.
Nah, you've changed, man.
And that's gonna do it for the video. Now, I've been told to do the YouTuber thing at the end, so if you like this video, you wanna see more of it, subscribe, like it, comment, share it, do all that fun jazz. As a new creator, I kinda have to bend over for the algorithm and hope it likes what it sees, so anything that boosts this video would be really helpful. Also, I stream variety gaming and music content on Twitch at least once a week, so go check me out there. And of course, thanks for watching and listening to me ramble about the original Squid Game for about 15 minutes on end. Have a wonderful rest of your day, stay safe, and hope to see you soon. Bye!